Welcome back to Scotch and a Beer with Officer Dan, episode number 25. That's a quarter of 100. Again, thanks for watching these. I do try to drop them every single Monday so you can tune in and listen to the story. I'm sure a lot of people use these as just a podcast, but you can also watch the video where I put in random clips and pictures of my... In the last episode, we all got to play Street Drifters from midnight until 6 a.m. 2 nights in a row in downtown Albuquerque. It was one of the funnest sessions that I'd ever had until I got crashed into. In this episode, I'm going to wrap up the saga that is Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 3. But we're not done. There's more shit shows to be had. But first, a scotch and a beer. For the beer this time, I'm going to be going with the Santa Fe Brewing Social Hour. It's a hazy wit style brew with tropical fruit. I think I may have done one of these before, but it's what I have in my refrigerator, and I'm going to drink it because I like it. Social Hour. And for the scotch, I'm out of big bottles, so luckily my wife was kind enough to get me a tasting set that had many different scotches. You basically get like a finger and a half, but that's what we're going to deal with today. So we're going to randomly pick one and see which, and it's going to be Glenfiddich 15 years. The complexity and the sheer softness of these whiskeys comes from years of aging in the finest Oloroso sherry casks and a traditional bourbon cask as well. The sweet taste of traditional sherry brings in with perfect... This is horribly written. Anyway, it's a sweet single malt, and it won a gold medal for scotches in 2012 at the International Wine and Spirit Competition. Hot damn. So let's pour a little tiny dram of Glenfiddich 15. It's just enough to get a sample going, but that's all I got right now, people. Don't harsh me. Cherry pie. I mean, like the smell of the actual cherries in the cherry pie, not the bread part of the cherry pie, but the cherries of the cherry pie. Maybe some cinnamon. Smells like a Glade plug-in. It's not my favorite. I think it may be my least favorite scotch that I've actually put in my mouth. I could see it be, and it does seem like a really good scotch. I mean, it's a 15-year-old. It's smooth. It just... The flavor profile doesn't fit what I was expecting it to be. And that's okay. You can't like every single one. Up until this point, I have. So now I have one that I know I don't want to get. Hooray for sample packs. Now, getting back into the story. As I said, I had gotten wrecked into, and I was still upset about it. We were supposed to shoot at the racetrack that very next day. We had time scheduled out. We had paid for it. And now my car was in shambles, and I got home around 7 a.m. I took a 45-minute nap, and then I brought the car straight over to Car Crafters, and we started working on it. We had to get a new control arm done. I had to find a new front wheel. I had to replace a coilover. I had to replace a knuckle. It was a huge ordeal that ended up canceling our shoot at the racetrack for that day. Luckily, I was still running events out there, and we were able to salvage it by pushing the day 2 days forward. Instead, we all had a lunch and again had to brainstorm ways to actually make this fit into the plot that had now changed 6 goddamn times. Props to Matt and crew again for sticking with us on this one. Everything went to shit, and that's part of what makes you guys awesome. So, in necessity more than anything else, we had decided that that evening, once we got the car fixed and running, because we said we could get it done that day, we would go poach a location and film a very specific sequence that would kind of tie in the reason why I crashed my car and why I was going to meet these guys at the racetrack. Because up until now, we were going to just chase them to the racetrack, and that couldn't happen because we didn't have time at this point. So around 10 p.m. on the night before we were supposed to go to the racetrack, Nick, Ernie, Matt Sanders, Manny, and a very, very small crew of people headed out to a intersection in a warehouse district that we knew was going to be basically empty for the rest of the evening. Now, because we weren't street drifting, we were in a little bit better place than we were going to be, but we were still driving my unregistered, uninsured, loud-ass drift car on the streets, and they were driving their unregistered, uninsured turbo motorcycles on the streets in full leathers, which is fine. It just draws attention because they're bright red and bright yellow. So we knew going into it that we only had a little bit of time before somebody would call the cops and be like, these people are retarded, why are they out here? And the reason why we were there is because we were going to film the scene where I drive by and basically issue the motorcycle guys a challenge by covering them in flyers that I had drawn up in my spare time.
I issued a challenge in the most spectacular way possible. I drew up a bunch of flyers in my spare time and I threw it at them at great speeds.
This would turn out to be a lot harder than we thought it was going to. I had spent probably an hour actually drawing different flyers out and different things to say and all of this stuff that I could actually mix in with a thicker pack of blank papers so that I didn't have to do all of them, but I did do a ton of designs for it. It was really quality artwork. The biker guys are supposed to skid up to an intersection. I'm supposed to be driving by the opposite direction doing the speed limit, and I ended up going way too slow and I was way too early. So basically I threw the clump of papers out, like 2 papers peeled off the top, and the papers just landed on the ground and just kind of spread out. And it was in the middle of the intersection, so neither of those were going to work. I needed to A, speed up the car, and B, throw the papers a little bit later. Okay, cool, I think I got this. We reset and we go for it again. I go a lot faster this time and I throw the papers. This time the papers explode everywhere and end up 30 feet behind Nick and Ernie. So then we spend the next 20 minutes picking up hundreds of sheets of paper off of the road. Sick. It is cold as hell at this point. I have no heater, I have no windows. The guys are on motorcycles. The film guys are miserable because we have to do this in the first place. It's just not a good evening. And now I'm messing it up because I can't throw papers at people properly. There's a lot of alliteration. We try it again. I head over and I throw the papers out, and this time they don't unfurl again, and it just basically hits Nick's bike and just falls to the ground. It's just a clump of paper. All right, reset, do it again. We tried it like 6 more times and it just wasn't working. Basically what we wanted it to do was go out the window, spread out, and shower Nick and Ernie with papers. And it just wasn't working. I kept throwing it out and it kept being a clump of papers that wouldn't go apart. So what we ended up doing was wrinkling a bunch of the papers in the middle and clumping it together and then throwing it out. We finally did that, and of course I missed the timing and threw it early, but it did unfurl and all the papers went everywhere like they were supposed to. It was fantastic. Okay, so now all we needed to do was get the timing right. Who knew that throwing paper at people out of a car window could be so freaking difficult? Anyway, add that to the resume. We finally got one that worked well. I accelerated down the road, I looked out the window, I gave the grimace face, and I threw the papers out at them. They spread and went kind of all over the place around the biker guys. Perfect. And then they showed some super advanced artwork of me explaining that I could drift and Nick and Ernie either could not or would not. It's up to them. I still have that paper somewhere, but I have no idea where it is. I should frame it. Anyway, we filmed a couple more lines and some B-roll and so on and so forth of them looking at the paper and being disgruntled, and then we called it a night because at this point it was like midnight and we were for sure going to get the cops called on us because we'd been out there for 2 freaking hours. Plus it was really cold. Plot fix acquired, time for sleep. So we awoke the next day and it was time to head out to the track bright and early so that we could make shit happen. So we got to the track, we had a little meeting, we needed to still, again, salvage what was left of the plot that we had acquired slash gotten slash... At this point, nothing had gone to plan, nothing had gone according to the storyboards or the script or the original ideas that we had for this video. Nothing worked. Everybody was frustrated, everybody was disgruntled, everybody was a little bit grumpy, and we just wanted this to be done so that we could release this shit sandwich of a video. As we were all realizing at this point that this video, because of all of these issues, could actually suck. Like, this could ruin us. We would never do another motorcycle versus car drift battle video again. Like, that's how this shoot was going. None of us liked where it was headed, and we only had 2 days left to salvage stuff. That's okay. The cars are still running, the bikes were still running, and we were still able to push the record button on cameras. The day started off with me taking on and off my Grip Royal, which was my favorite, and I just mentioned it in an Instagram post, my favorite steering wheel of all time, which I still have to this day. They just sent me an upgraded version, so thanks Grip Royal for supporting me since the get-go. Love you guys to death. Now, as I was sitting there just being bored, waiting for the guys to hopefully show up at high noon, the motorcycle guys finally roll up next to me and they throw a crumpled up piece of paper into my car, to which I unfurl, and they've crossed out my name and checked off that they can drift. Alright, challenge accepted. After that it was on. We filmed a couple of corners, we filmed a couple of instances of me drifting by myself, them drifting by themselves, us drifting together, with us blasting high speed turns, with us busting low speed turns. We had gotten like 6 or 7 shots out of the way, and things were starting to look up. We had some glory shots planned that were going to really kind of seal the deal of us being at the track, and then how the guys kind of got away from me towards the end, and how we chased each other outside of the track. That was how it was supposed to be. And right as we were feeling good, I was about to hit this hairpin. I was trying to get as close as I could to the boys, and once again disaster strikes.
Well, that sound ain't good.
I rod knocked my freaking motor. Lesson learned: if you're at 500 horsepower in an RB, banging red limiter for 3 nights in a row, basically, you can't do that. It's just, they don't like it, and it rod knocked right then and there, and that was it. Day was over. We'd gotten like 8 shots. The shit show continued. I got out of the car and they wanted to film me saying something funny, and the only thing that I could come up with, because I wasn't feeling funny once again, was fruit flies have entered the meatloaf.
All right, Mr. Buck, they're all yours, man. Fruit flies have entered the meatloaf. I'm out.
Which was supposed to be code for Buck taking over my case and chasing the bike guys instead of me. I didn't want to say those words because I wanted to keep chasing the guys on bikes. That's kind of the point. I then ripped the CB radio thing out of my pocket, which wasn't actually connected to anything. I don't know if anybody got that, but I guess it didn't make sense because the CB radio could have been in my pocket. But anyway, I just thought it was funny that I ripped it out and it wasn't attached to anything. So I was basically making all of this up in my head. It's deep. And with that action, I had officially given up the chase. Now, we also had to push the car back out from where it was, and as I was pushing it across, they were filming it, and the bike guys came blasting by, did some donuts around me, and then the drone came down, and I was actually pissed and swatted at it. I wasn't in a happy SWAT mood. I was in a pissed off SWAT mood because I'd just blown my motor. So at that point, plot-wise, the bike guys had officially defeated Officer Dan, who issued them a challenge because he crashed into other people to not allow them to go after them, because he wanted them all to themselves. And yeah, it got real convoluted real fast. So they filmed a few more clips of the bike guys at the racetrack leaving, and we pushed my damn car back up onto my trailer, and I went home to cry myself to sleep. Now the next day we had Bobby Foster Road rented out again. we had to film quite a few things here. This was going to be the now reason why Buck was taking over and the transition into Buck taking over. This was supposed to be me drifting with Buck in this area, and I was really excited to do that, and I didn't get to. So instead it became a hard transition from Officer Dan to Officer Buck. We were also supposed to film the very ending of the video, which we didn't actually know what it was yet because everything had changed 27 times. So I went out there anyway. I drove my daily driver because that was the only drift car that I had running still. And it wasn't very capable. It was just a stock horsepower SR with way too big wheels and tires on it to actually make anything happen. So I was just out there to help, basically, and give moral support to the film crew making the thing happen. Now it was at this point that I would like to talk about, again, how crazy Manny Nieto is. Not only did he surf his truck that I mentioned in the last video, but he was the one that got the footage of Buck doing the wheelie like inches away from his face. It was this shot, and this is what it looked like from the outside. Manny is a complete nut job. So Manny was always the guy that was getting the shots that nobody else wanted to get because Manny don't give a fuck. They did a bunch of shots with Buck, and they did a bunch of shots with the bikes, and they did a bunch of shots like intermingling the two together, and kind of the intro to Buck actually going for the motorcycles. So we all lined up in our trucks, cars, minivans, rental cars, and me in the daily driver. And what was supposed to happen, to the best of my understanding, was that all of the cars were supposed to just kind of cruise along at the same speeds. The motorcycle guys were supposed to blast by on the left, and I was supposed to spin the car out because I was scared of the motorcycles, and then Buck was supposed to blast by after that. I wasn't knowledgeable enough in the film industry to ask which freaking side he was going to be on, and almost caused another disaster. So as the motorcycle guys went by my car, I spun out and went towards the right and ended up with the nose of the car right on the edge of the street. And Buck had decided to go onto the shoulder because he was in an off-road buggy, and that was off-road. And so Buck guns it, I spin out, and Buck is pinned up against a fence and now a spun out vehicle. And Buck barely skids through, touching the fence with one tire and touching my car with another. It was the tightest of fits in a negative increment. Like sometimes you're like, oh, that dude was like millimeters from the wall. In this instance, it would have been, oh, that dude was like -6 into the wall. Doesn't even make sense, but that's what it seemed like in my mind. So this would end up being the most scary and awesome scene of the entire video. So if you go back and watch it, it's not very exciting film-wise, but like stunt-wise, that's a hell of an exciting thing because Buck literally had no room to go through, and he fit through anyway without destroying A, the 240, and B, his buggy, which apparently was already sold to somebody in the UAE at that time. So he had to be really careful with that thing. And I'm lucky that Buck is such a dialed driver and so comfortable in that car, or he would have totaled both. And that would have been just another addition to the shit show that was Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 3. Luckily, because of him, it wasn't. So when Buck came back over, we looked at the front of my car and we looked at Buck's tire, and sure as shit, there was paint missing from my bumper, which had now been applied to Buck's sidewall. Oh. Thanks, Buck, for not killing both of us. You're the man now. So once the nerves calmed down a little bit from that, and we kind of were like, okay, cool, we're just going to use that one looked fine, and we moved on. So at this point, we moved on to a different location, kind of down the street, and they filmed some hits at an off-road park of Buck kind of doing that in the slow motion stuff, and I was just chilling in the back of the pickup truck giving, again, moral support because I was there to hang out. I was also the GoPro retriever for when Buck smashed this GoPro over. Sick. And we'd gotten some pretty good stuff. We ended up filming the rest of the day kind of in that area, and now it was time for what we had decided to be the last shot of the day. And contrary to what we had written and contrary to what we had talked about, it was going to be Federale Dan letting the motorcycles go by and stopping Buck from entering into Mexico. Okay, I guess that could make sense in some weird twisted way, and that's all we had to work with at this point. So we got a brown Officer Dan uniform, printed out some stickers, put it on the brown uniform, and we filmed a few different takes and it wasn't working. They were like, something needs to change, you look too much like regular Officer Dan. And so the decision was made to spray paint my mustache black. Never spray paint your mustache black. It is the worst decision that you could ever make. Not only do you constantly get high from smelling the fumes from the spray paint that is now applied to your face, but that doesn't come off. The hair was actually making the cutter jam when I was trying to shave it because it was so rock hard from being black spray painted. Probably not the best thing to have on your face. Not only that, but when I finally did get it shaved, I had black lines all over my face and I looked like an idiot. Not that I don't look like an idiot normally, but even more like an idiot. Like, why does that guy have 2 black splotches all over his mustache? Wonder if he's trying to color it in. No, we're just trying to shave it off. So we figured everything out. The motorcycles blasted by. Buck did a couple of takes of going up. Finally nailed one where he kind of did this awesome 4-wheel slide up into the stopping point, and that was right as the Chevette was pulling forward to block his path. So it was a really tough timing thing where the motorcycles blast by, he pulls up, and then the truck skids to a stop without hitting anything. They nailed that one. It was getting dark at this point, and we really needed that to happen. So the next shot was going to be of me with my freshly tinted mustache and my ultra sick Federale Dan uniform. Again, like I said, we just stuck some stickers on there. They gave me some Mardi Gras beads to look official, and a helmet, and some gloves. And I was just supposed to sit there and not say anything because I couldn't say anything in Spanish, and do this with my finger telling them, no, you cannot come across Buck. This is now my jurisdiction. So we nailed that. Then the Chevette did this huge burnout down the road, and it was a fast car, so that was pretty cool to see it do it on the mean streets of Albuquerque. And at that moment, after that burnout, the shoot was finally officially over. The nightmare that had been the last week and a half of my life was over. I had broken basically everything that I had more than once, and now I was left with a non-running car, and I had been axed out of probably 50% of the plot that I was supposed to be in. Shot my own self in the foot, and that was that. There was nothing I could do about it. And that happens. That's life. So we parted ways at that point. We gave our hugs, we said our goodbyes, and I wished Matt the best of luck editing whatever it is he was going to be able to edit this. We had put our faith in him that it was going to turn out okay, and went home feeling not super stoked about everything. It was, again, just not what we had wanted this video to be. We kind of want to redo it in the way that we did want it to be originally, with better cars, with better bikes, with better locations, with a full understanding of what we can and can't do, and actually do a video that way. If you got ideas, by all means send them to me. I've written a script for it, but Monster's kind of iffy about actually making anything happen at this point. They're too focused on Ken Block. So if you guys want to see another video, write Monster and let him know. Hey, we want to see some motorcycles drift with that idiot Dan. And that is where I'm going to end this video. In the next episode, I'll be skipping forward a bit to the release of Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 3, probably pairing that with another either event or happening that happened during the season. Probably another Danny George episode because I was still his spotter at this point, and I would be going to my next spotting gig with him, which would be Florida right after this. So this is Federale Dan wishing you the best of days, and I'll see you guys next Monday. Adios, amigos.